Do you hate picking up the phone? Does making a phone call to connect with someone else feel completely uncomfortable and invoke anxiety in you? You aren't alone. There's a ton of psychology behind this, and the reality is most of us aren't really wired anymore to do this. But sometimes in life and business, picking up the phone is going to give us the best result. Today on the podcast, I'm going to share some easy ways to make picking up the phone and connecting with businesses, other human beings, whether it be personal, business, or just life related, a little bit easier. Let this show be the sign the next time you know picking up the phone is the better option that you actually do it. Let's dive in. You're listening to the Girl Get Your Face Off a Bus Bench podcast, where we invite you to check your ego at the app, grab a cup of coffee, and get ready to dive into all things real estate marketing, social media, friendship, hardship, love, money mindset, and all the things that celebrate you as a badass boss babe.
We're here to encourage you, show up for you, give you a loving kick in the pants when you need it most, and be your soft place to land on the hardest of days. So pull up a seat at our table and get ready to be inspired and start living your best life by design.
Welcome to the Girl Get Your Face Off a Bus Bench podcast. We are so excited you're here.
Okay, girls, let's dive in.
Okay, Bus Bench babes. Today, we are going to dive right in and simplify picking up the phone and making a phone call. It seems super easy, right? But why do we have anxiety when we do it? I know I'm not alone in saying this. How many times have you sat with your partner or a friend and you're about to order takeout and you're like, I don't want to call. Will you just call? Or you need to call a business for any reason, or honestly, just call each other and you just get so much anxiety behind it. The reality is now in 2025, most of us have this anxiety when it comes to picking up the phone. So I'm going to break down where this comes from and how to overcome this, because connecting on that level is really effective and really important in many situations, not all, but technology, social media, email, apps where we can order anything and everything that we want have made us so much more disconnected and have made so much more anxiety flop into this area of our life. So without further ado, let's just jump right in. Okay, first thing to note is, again, you are totally not alone. There is such a large percentage of us that struggle with picking up the phone, and there's so much anxiety that comes with it. And when it comes to generations, younger generations have even more anxiety picking up the phone than, say, boomers do, which makes a lot of sense because we, growing up in a really heavily technology space, going through COVID, where we got even more disconnected, where everything turned to online. My gosh, you could order anything and everything online, and that has stuck with it. We don't have to have so many face-to-face interactions. We think that we are so much connected with other human beings with apps like Instagram and Facebook and all social media, when the reality is we are even more disconnected than we have ever been before. So what is it about the phone exactly? What is it that makes it so hard to pick it up and actually say some words, right? And how do we sort of settle that feeling in our tummy when we do so? Let's start from where this fear stems from. And the reality is it comes from many different places, and it's very dependent on situation and who we are as a human being. But most of it comes from just this fear of being judged. We don't know what the other person is thinking. We don't know what they're thinking of us. They don't know how they're going to take what we say. We lose all verbal cues. We lose body language. We lose gesture. So we can't really pick up on those basic things when we're in that give us information about someone else, what they're thinking and feeling, that we can when we're in a face-to-face interaction. We also feel pressure of time. If I make this phone call, I am going to only have X amount of time to get all the words out and get what I need to say out. And what if I forget something? So we put all this extra pressure on ourselves, where if we sit down and we write an email, or we send a text message, or we order something online, we have so much more time to think it through and double check it, where if we get on the phone, we lose all of that. That creates even more anxiety and doesn't give us time to really think it through. So that overthinking comes into play. And the big one, we feel like we're bothering someone. Like picking up the phone has become this big thing where we're bothering someone, right? Where before you just picked up the phone. If you wanted to communicate with someone, you just picked up the phone. You didn't think about it. And now it's like, well, I'll just shoot them a text message instead of just calling them because I'm not sure if they'll be available or if I'm going to bug them. I am so guilty of this. Like how many times I text a friend or Carrie or Beth, or just really honestly anyone that I'm working with. And I'll say, hey, do you have a minute to chat? You could have just picked up the phone, right? So it's become sort of this like extra courtesy that we give each other, but we've added this one layer, this one step on to this verbal communication that we really don't need to, which is really kind of silly, but it also makes sense at the same time because it gives us this calm space to operate in. Okay, they're ready for me. They're ready for this conversation. So there are so many things that just come into play when we sit there and think about how we don't want to pick up the phone. I can't tell you how many times I've had an argument with Ryan over the years of, and this was before like online ordering was like such a big deal, but there are some places where we still have to call and place an order, like takeout or something simple like that. And I will be like, okay, here's the order, you call. And he'll say, I don't want to call. Why can't you call? And it's a silly back and forth thing. And now I'm just chuckling because after researching for this episode and really diving into this and thinking about it, I'm like, it's really so silly that we have such fear of what's going to be on the other end. But the reality is most of us have it and it's a real thing. So it comes into play in our businesses and lives so much. And when we think about communicating with clients, this is another thing where so many agents, if you're a realtor listening to this, I'm speaking directly to you. If not, if you're just but if you're an entrepreneur listening to this, the same goes for you. Picking up the phone and reaching out to a client is like, do they want to hear from me? What if they are annoyed? What if this isn't a good time? All of that comes into play. And it's all a very real thing, but connecting with them where they hear your voice is also very, very important. Beth and I chat all about on episode 178, crushing client check-ins. And we dive into this pretty deep on how to do this and how to do this in a really authentic way that resonates with them and where you can show up as yourself and as your business in a really cool way. So definitely head back to 178 if you are wondering how to do that and how to really connect with clients. Beth also dives into script practice and lead generating. So if you're a realtor listening to this podcast right now and you're thinking, okay, so if I pick up the phone, what do I say? She dives into all of that on that episode, exactly what to say to calm your nerves and to make it easy. And she also chats about how she used to consume certain things beforehand to make it so she could actually pick up the phone. It's a great episode 106. Okay, so now let's chat a little bit about how do we get over this so we can actually just make it easier. Of course, we're all picking up the phone at some point, right? We all need to, but how can we get over this to make it easier on us, to make it less scary, and to sort of eliminate this fear of actually doing it? And it's really basic. We just practice and we do it over and over and over again. You pick up the phone and call your friend. You call your client. You make your appointment over the phone. Like think of ways where you can pick up the phone and actually call someone to do something to help you get over this fear. Trust me, this works. I have done this and I practice this in my life quite a bit. Now, when it comes to appointments, let's be real. There are many appointments you're not going to sit on the phone for that long to make. But if you can think of like smaller ones, like simple ones where you can actually connect, this will help you so much. This reminds me, I'm going to kind of go backwards a little bit here. Sometimes reaching out to others is the connection that we need to make the transaction happen, to make the sale happen, to get our point across, to really be clear in our marketing, to be clear in who we are, to be clear in who we're serving. So this is something where if you can start exercising this muscle a little bit more, it's only going to help you. There are some agents that are just crushing this, picking up the phone left and right. And you're like, how are they doing it? And the reality is they're doing it all the time. And that's how they're doing it. It's not any easier for them. It's just easier for them now because they've been doing so much of it. And this runs across all businesses and all personal things in life. I'm going to share a little story here with you that I have not shared on the podcast before. And it's really personal and it's money mindset related and all that jazz. I think it's super relevant to this conversation. When Ryan and I decided that we wanted to purchase land on the North Shore here in Minnesota, we made the decision. We started, looking at properties and figuring out what we could do. We figured out our budget and all of that jazz. Like we all know what that looks like, right? And the next step was calling a local bank. I had reached out to my friends here in the cities, and they were all so gracious with information and provided so much to me. But what they couldn't provide to me was an actual loan. I needed to work with a local bank in the area because it was land. It wasn't like an actual home to buy. So I knew I had this big to do of reaching out to a local bank. I had emailed a local bank and they were wonderful. And the next step was, okay, like give us a call and we can chat more details. I was terrified. I'm like, what do you mean give us a call? We can chat more details. Isn't everything going to be online? Isn't this how it is? Like, can I just give you all the information on this fancy form and that's it? But the reality is I was dealing with a small local bank and the process was going to look a lot differently than it was going to look if I was working down in the cities. So I had I was probably sweating. I was like so upset. I waited days, I think I waited a couple weeks. I was so freaked out on what to do and picking up the phone. And I remember having this conversation with Beth and she was like, eat the frog. And I was like, okay, Beth, like, I know you say that, like eat the frog. Okay. Which means to just do the hard thing. Right. And I was like, I can't. She's like, just pick it up. It's going to go great. Just pick up the phone and call him. It's going to go great. And I was like, but you don't know it's going to go great. She's like, it's going to go great. Just pick up the phone and you might be surprised. And I was like, oh my gosh. So after her gentle and then not so gentle nudging in that direction, I finally got the courage to pick up the phone. And on the other end was the exact information I needed, the most friendly person. And I shared with them that I was a small business owner and I'd been a small business owner, I've been an entrepreneur the majority of my life. I tried waiting tables for a little bit. It was a disaster. I'm just not good at the balance part of that. But I have been an entrepreneur for the majority of my life. And I remembered when I went to purchase my first house, how I had all the financials in order. I made enough money to have this house. I was purchasing it with my partner at the time. And in the end, they, without me knowing, took my information out of the loan and just had my partner basically be the one that qualified for the loan. And I didn't even know they did this, but because the bank was getting so hung up on my financials as an entrepreneur. And they just didn't believe that this information coming in was what it was. They basically didn't believe I made what I made. And I laugh now because I'm like, it's so ridiculous. Like there was a trail of all of it and I was making that much money and they didn't believe it. So I was feeling so good throughout that process of, oh my gosh, like I'm going to be on this loan, like entrepreneurship is great. And then in the end found out they took me off and then just added my name later. And that was like a big gut punch. So fast forward to, a year ago or a little over a year ago when I picked up the phone to call the bank, all this is running through me. Like I'm an entrepreneur. They're going to have issues with like my banking. Like I know I have the funds there available, but will they actually give me the loan? So in this conversation and after much encouragement from Beth, I asked the question I said, I'm an entrepreneur. I've been in business X amount of years. I shared my financials with them and I said, I would like to qualify for this loan on my own. And the woman on the other end said, great, send me your stuff over. And I just remember like almost tearing up because I expected so much pushback of like, well, we need this like W-2 and all this jazz, right? And it just was not the case. So the reason I'm sharing this with you is because if I had not picked up the phone, if I had kept dragging my feet through this, who knows where this would have led? I would have caused myself so much stress. And Beth, I'm just going to say it. She was completely right. Just pick up the phone. Just do it, right? And it all worked out great. And I qualified for the loan completely by myself. And that gave me like a lot of like encouragement and just like that reminder that what I was doing was really valid, which I'm sure a lot of you can relate to, right? When you're in this world of entrepreneurship and you're just not really quite, people either they don't know what you do or they don't understand it, or you're just looked at a little bit differently than if you get a paycheck every 2 weeks. This was the validity that I think I needed in that moment. And it felt so good. And the process after was fantastic. So the moral of this story is pick up the phone. If I had not done that, I have no idea where we would have ended up, and I would not have been able to rework that framing in my brain that I can do this. All right. So back to what we were talking about here. I would have not been able to start building that new neural network of, oh no, what you do is valid and you can do this. And you as a woman entrepreneur can actually go purchase a property by yourself, which honestly, to this day, I still feel like, is this real life? So it's all very exciting. And it's really one of those things where you have to just kind of get over yourself and your own anxieties and just do it. So back to ways to do it. Honestly, if you need a little encouragement, call Beth. No, I'm just kidding. Call a friend, call the client, make your appointment over the phone, figure out who you can do or what you can do over the phone to practice this. And then take a deep breath. And once you do it once, take a deep breath and do it again and do it again and do it again. So if you're listening to this and thinking like, I get all that, but also I just prefer to text. It's just easier. My encouragement to you is to start with voice memos. I freaking love voice memos. I use voice memos daily, personal business. I send them all the time. We send them via Slack, or actually I think I might be the only one that's sending them via Slack. No, I think Beth does sometimes too. But it's just such a great way to explain what you're doing, and also a really great way to start like having a conversation with that space to think about it, and then to allow the person on the other end some space to think about it. I'm on the board of directors at Kaya's school, and we're currently working on a big website and branding project. And I have been sending a lovely friend of mine who is working on this project with me. We've been sending voice messages back and forth, and he's like, I've never done this before. This is so great. And it's like, it is so great, right? And then you feel like you're having this conversation, but then once that conversation gets on the phone or in person, it's even easier because you've already started to open up that door and open up those possibilities of what communication can look like with another person. So that is my encouragement for you. I'm obsessed with voice notes. I think it's a great place to start. So if you are sitting there thinking, I'm afraid to call my clients, I don't know what to say, head back to episode 106 where Beth breaks down script practice and exactly what to say, and episode 178 where we both chat about crushing client check-ins. So let this be your sign today to pick up the phone. If you have a list of clients in front of you, or maybe there's a friend that you haven't reached out to in forever and you just know you need to call them, but you've been texting, but you haven't heard their voice in who knows how long, this is your sign to make the time to make the phone call. All right, Bus Bench Babes. I hope this episode was inspiring, and I really hope that today you can make at least one phone call to that person that you know you need to connect with. So until next time, remember to keep your face off a bus bench and keep being the badass boss babe that you are, and pick up the phone. Okay, girls, are you feeling as inspired as we are? We're over here cheering you on because you just finished another episode of the Girl, Get Your Face Off a Bus Bench podcast.
If you want more, head over to girlgetyourfaceoffabusbench.com for show notes and more episodes. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. They mean the world to us, and they're what keep us going.
Girl, thanks for being here.